Hello, and welcome to SecureTalk, a podcast where we explore the critical world of information security innovation and compliance. I'm your host, Justin Beals, founder and CEO of StrikeGraph. Together with our expert guests, we'll provide you tools and tips to help your business thrive in the rapidly evolving cybersecurity environment. Hello, everyone, and welcome to SecureTalk. I'm your host, Justin Beals. In today's increasingly connected digital ecosystem, APIs have become the essential building blocks that allow our applications to communicate and share data. They're so pervasive, they're literally a layer in almost every application we build. So even inside the software, the elements can communicate with each other in an effective way. But as these critical pathways proliferate across organizations, they've created a new frontier of security challenges that few companies are fully prepared to address. When I was developing software years ago, I relied on a tool called Postman that functioned like an oscilloscope for API communications, allowing me to peer into the interactions between systems and troubleshoot connections. Today, that same tool has evolved into something far more powerful, and our guest is at the forefront of transforming how organizations secure their API ecosystems. Imagine a future where AI agents seamlessly communicate with each other, executing complex tasks and workflows without any human intervention. This isn't science fiction, it's already happening. Here at StrikeGraph, we are already rolling out agent-to-agent protocols. And these agentic AI systems need secure pathways to interact with real-world systems. And what underlies any of those interactions? The APIs that we've already developed. Our guest today describes this revolution perfectly. Soon, it won't be software developers manually coding RESTful integrations, but power users wiring up agents to perform complex business tasks through available APIs. The companies that master this transition will have a tremendous competitive advantage, but they'll also face unprecedented security concerns. How do we maintain visibility into hundreds of thousands of APIs or the transactions of data? How do we validate both their functionality and their security? And most importantly, how do we build trust with customers when we're the custodians of their most sensitive data connections? These aren't theoretical questions. As our guest shares, when you hold the keys to the kingdom, all the interconnectivity of applications, data calls, access keys, security isn't just a checkbox. It's a foundational element of product and reputation. In our conversation, we'll explore the evolution of API security from the early days of basic functionality to today's more comprehensive governance frameworks. We'll discuss the challenges of securing modern API ecosystems, the role of AI in transforming how we approach security, and the critical balance between enabling innovation and maintaining control. For anyone building digital products, managing technology infrastructure, or concerned about protecting data in our interconnected world, this episode offers invaluable insights from someone at the cutting edge of API security. Today, we're joined by Sam Chehab. Sam is a seasoned technology leader, currently serving as head of security and IT at Postman. With deep expertise in cybersecurity, software engineering, and IT management, Sam excels at translating business requirements into robust security programs and driving technology operations to meet strategic goals. Previously, Sam served as Senior Director of Enterprise and Data Security at Palo Alto Networks, where he led Zero Trust strategy deployment and governance initiatives. Prior to that, he spent over 8 years at NVIDIA, advancing to Director of Application Development, where he managed more than 250 applications and led a team of 50 engineers. His key accomplishments include developing an adoptable security framework shared with S&P 500 customers, establishing machine learning capabilities, architecting cloud migration strategies, and transforming user experiences for critical business systems. Sam holds an executive MBA from the University of San Francisco and completed MIT Sloan's Cybersecurity for Managers program. His core expertise includes cybersecurity incident response, governance, risk management, and compliance. And he has been recognized as an InfoSec Security Partner MVP. Join me as we dive into the future of API security with Postman's Sam Chehab. Sam, welcome to SecureTalk today. We're really lucky to have you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's always fun to talk shop.
So one of the things that really stood out to me when we were researching you for a guest is your work at Postman. So I'm just going to own that I know this product, Postman, fairly well. I used it a bunch when I was a developer, and I have a real soft spot in my heart for it. It has solved me many problems over the years as a software engineer, where I was like, I do not understand why this API is not working for me. You must similarly have worked with the tool for a long time before you started working at the company.
Yeah, I was a big user of it long before I came to Postman. In prior lives at Palo Alto Networks and NVIDIA, it's kind of the de facto tool. When you're in the hands of like 35 million developers and I don't know, probably like 90+% of the Fortune 500, you almost can't run into someone who hasn't used it in some capacity.
Yeah. And if I were to describe what it did for me, you can tell me if it resonates with you. I used to work in the telecom industry a long time ago, and the old school days where we'd want to put like an oscilloscope or something on the line to measure the frequency of transmission. It was kind of like that for API communications. Like I could peer into another system that I was trying to reach data in or provide data to and really see what was happening in the back and forth at a detailed level.
I think that's probably the interesting part of any platform, really, is your journey can start in a couple of different places. Mm-hmm. Often it can start into I don't want to learn curl, but I just need to be able to call an API.
Yeah.
It can start into wow, we have a lot of APIs and just how do we get a handle on the documentation to get it to someone? Mm-hmm. It could start, your journey could start on hey, I need to test a lot of APIs as a QA engineer. And so your journey can start in a lot of places. It could even start from a security perspective in wow, there are hundreds of APIs out here. No one really has a good picture of everything. This seems like an opportunity for me to get a single control plane in order to understand what's going on and govern it. So there's a couple of different entry points depending upon your role in your profession. But we all kind of end up converging at the same point at some reasonable distance is who's building what? How are they building it? Yeah. How are we validating it? How are we securing it? Things of that nature.
Yeah. And so you recently joined as the head of security at Postman. Is that right?
Yeah. This would have been the September timeframe of 24.
So I'm a little curious, what attracted you to coming and working at the company? Is there an initiative that you see for this tool, the platform, where they're going that you're really excited about?
Well, I think there's the first piece of it probably is just the fact that security at Postman in the company's life cycle is an interesting inflection point. From a security perspective, in Series A, Series B, your security guy is your developer, and it's just how do you take the company to the next level? In a Fortune 500, it's, hey, do your thing off in the corner and write a policy and stay out of my way. Yeah. We're at an interesting inflection point at Postman right now where security very much is transformational as we get deeper and deeper integrated into enterprises. How do we help them handle their workloads in a secure way, but at the same time, meet that spirit of collaboration. Mm-hmm. And to me, that was the exciting piece of, well, we're on the cusp of something great here. And I want to be a part of that. And I want to bring kind of my security and engineering expertise to kind of take them on that journey, because there aren't very many individuals who can really shepherd that process. And so that was kind of step one. I would probably be remiss, because just about every podcast you have, someone probably says AI. Yeah. I would be remiss to not mention AI in the sense that, and you saw this with Google's announcement for agent-to-agent, their agent-to-agent protocol, and the model context protocol that Anthropic has rolled out, is all of these agents that are now getting stood up need to interact with the real world and do something, and invoke the verb, if you will, into the world. Well, that's going to be based on many of the APIs that we already have and have built. And so when you look at the entire Postman public network, where we have hundreds of thousands of APIs ready to already cataloged and indexed and documented and maintained by developers, and then your own internal APIs, well, there aren't a lot of better answers out there in the market that would even help you wire all those agents together. And that's really shepherding what I would see as a revolution in HR departments, in IT departments of the future. Is it's no longer Sam, the IT admin, that clicks the checkbox. It's now Sam is the power user wiring up all of these agents to go perform complex business tasks for individuals, because we're no longer just buying SaaS apps that plug it all together for us. And so I think that's the, if I had to give you like a token AI answer, like that would probably be the reason why I'm seeing that shift in the market. And that's just really what kind of attracted the moth to the Postman flame, if you will.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a real intersection. I think that those of us that have worked in machine learning for a longer period of time or been around, large scale computing systems, when you have the data, right? And to your point, Postman has evolved from, I remember when it was a desktop app and I would use it to hit APIs, to like a more of a SaaS tool with a large database of information. And so you have all that data about APIs and how they work. We have an understanding from an agentic perspective of things we want to do. So much of it is driven between getting data in and out. I mean, this is Zapier, right? Like Zapier built $100 million plus year of business out of the fact that they'll get a light touch from one system to another. And if we can automate that through a real API perspective, it's very powerful.
Yeah, I see so much more than what I would consider an automation engine, but really how do we make a collaborative platform where agents and humans are collaborating to build out kind of what I would say is the next series of SaaS applications. So I see such a larger ecosystem that's really going to get built here beyond kind of what's out in the market today. And that's the exciting part. And you mentioned kind of old school machine learning. It reminds me of a conversation that I had with Jensen Huang. This would have been 2016. Mm-hmm. We were trying to use long-term, short-term memory to build the equivalent of a broad domain chatbot. And I remember we worked on it for like 6 months, and we were just toiling on how to keep context in memory so that you could keep like a long contiguous conversation. And we had this demo all dialed out on their internal defect tracking system. And we presented it to him, and he said, "Can I see your laptop?" And I slid the laptop over to him, and he typed in, "What is Jensen Huang's favorite barbecue sauce?" And that's clearly out of domain at that time. That was absolutely out of domain. Yeah. And the bot replied back with, "Cannot answer this question." And he's like, okay. Well, my expectations, and just how far we've come and how far we're going to go, I think is just going to be fascinating over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think we're pretty bought into this concept too, even in our own work, because the way we see it is the agentic system to us is the old workflow that we might have found in it, like the Archer GRC tool or ServiceNow. Like instead of having to decide what's got to connect to what and design that,
yes,
have a whole technical suite of people, you're going to present the business problem. And the AI system is literally going to develop the agent and integrations to run those processes for you. Yeah.
And there's no one better positioned right now to kind of usher in pulling all of that together, which to probably a long-winded answer to your question, but really why I joined Postman and where I see us taking it.
I was reading on the website at Postman that I think in recently, 2022 State of the API report, 50% of the respondents reported API security as like a big reason that they're, interested in Postman. practically, how do you think about the product and security? What types of ways do you feel like you want to embed good security in the Postman product experience?
So there's a lot there today. I think there's a lot more that we want to do. With regards to what's there today, being able to have full visibility into your APIs, being able to have your test cases for functionality and security all in the same place, just goes light years ahead of kind of where the industry is. Historically, in my past life, we fired up Burp Suite every single time we needed to test something in the security space. But now those test cases are completely devoid, and it's two humans talking to one another in order to run tools. And really, it should just be that integrated stack together. So it pulls that collaboration element together from a governance standpoint, just ensuring that kind of your basic tick and tie for HTTPS is turned on, headers are properly set, secrets management is there, things of that nature. Those are already there and available for you. But there's clearly more we want to be able to do in that platform to make it even easier. Because as you'll see from the State of the API report, or you'll see from GitGuardian's State of Secret Sprawls, hygiene is the enemy in this space across the board. And we need to be a great platform, we need to be able to help you kind of go from inception to deployment and take you through that entire life cycle.
Yeah, I do think like there's a guardrail factor, effective configuration. And it's interesting. I was interviewing somebody from TSA, and they were talking about how, like in the TSA line, when people are looking at that screen and going bag after bag, they actually have to put in enough things to look for to keep the human's attention span, looking at stuff. And I think that's where a lot of these control designs fail, where a human has to be in the loop, because they're looking at the same thing every single quarter or every single month. They're gonna miss when something is off, actually, because the brain is already expecting it. The machine won't. It never gets tired in that way. And I think that solves some of that baseline configuration challenges. Yeah.
And in fact, I would argue that's probably what the successful manifestation of a frictionless system actually is now I need to introduce variance so that your human brain doesn't fall asleep at the wheel, because otherwise it's frictionless in that I'm validating everything I can possibly validate, and you're only catching the anomalies.
Yeah.
Which is akin to just about every security problem on the planet. Like, how do I eliminate all the noise so that I only see the truly meaningful things that require my human brain?
Yeah. You were at Palo Alto Networks before you joined Postman. Tell us a little bit about your role there and how it prepared you for the work at Postman.
Sure. So at Palo Alto Networks, I ran enterprise security. So there's an interesting dynamic running security at a security company. And not just any company, but Palo Alto Networks, in that you're really a kid in a candy store. I don't know what SKUs are. I don't know what price is. I have all you can eat of everything. And when I need to go into the market, I first go to the engineering team and say, here's the problem I've got. How can you help me? Yeah. And so it was fascinating from that respect, because more often than not, I've always been on the other side of the house. Like when I was at NVIDIA, oh, well, do we really need this? What problem are we trying to solve? And at Palo was like the exact opposite. And so that was fascinating, in that once you lived in a world where it was all you could eat, it's hard to leave security in a space like that, because they get security. What Palo sells is trust. And every company sells trust, but it's truly sacred at a security company. And what that taught me was, when I ended up interviewing, I needed to make sure that Postman realized they were selling trust. Mm-hmm. And as a part of my interview, I think my interview with Abhinav, our CEO, was about 15 minutes. It wasn't a very long interview. But basically it came down to, I said, well, what's important to you? And he's like, SRP. I'm like, oh, well, I haven't heard that acronym. So please educate me. And he's like, security, reliability, performance. And I was like, oh, well, I I happen to think your priorities are in the right place. If you get popped, no one's going to trust your platform. And how you handle being popped matters on how people trust your platform. And that was top of mind for him. That was the first thing that he cared about. It wasn't feature. Hey, you sit in the corner and try to tick and tie a checkbox for me. It was, how do we live for the next 20 years? Mm-hmm. And when founders think that way, it just immediately resonated with kind of how Palo Alto Networks thought. And that really won me over.
Yeah. It's funny. I think sometimes I see that bell curve meme where the people that are just new to the knowledge in the space actually have the right attitude. They're like, our customers got to trust us. And the ones in the middle are like, I'm just trying to buy a firewall. And then the ones on the other end are like, everything is security, right? Like if we're not resilient, if we don't provide a service that's in a repeatable fashion, and they see it as an absolute critical. Palo is a security company. They talk to people working in security, and if you don't feel like mission aligned, they're not going to buy. Yeah.
Yeah. So no, and I've spoken with I don't know, no less than 100 of our customers and EBCs, and once they spoke with someone who ran security, i.e., my job hinged on it.
Yeah.
It immediately built rapport with, look, like I'm here to talk shop with you about how I solve problems, and I'm not interested in trying to say that I live in this panacea and I work 10 hours a week. Like I'm in the thick of it just like you. And that immediately built a lot of rapport with them. And that's a lot of what I've taken to Postman from a cultural mindset of how do we build trust with our customers, because you have the keys to your kingdom with us. All the interconnectivity of your applications, your data, your calls, your keys. We need that same level of seriousness at this company that Palo has. And that's the level of discipline and mindset that I've brought to Palo or to Postman. And I wouldn't have brought it if we didn't have kind of that founder down mindset for security, reliability, performance.
Yeah. I have a particular cybersecurity question. I'm an ex-chief technology officer turned CEO, so I always own that I'm not a deep cybersecurity expert, but I'm always asking. And since you're such a deep expert in the API space, I have this question about, the agent style, like integrations deployment. I have struggled with them. They frustrate me a little bit, oftentimes because I don't have introspection on what that agent wants to do inside my system. I'm curious your take. I mean, we see tool sets like CrowdStrike that are, agent driven at the endpoint, close to the metal, but there were resilience issues, in that modality.
As far as agent, non-agent goes, there's pros and cons to both. Mm-hmm. It's just some of the cons being is often agents will conflict with one another. And so you have kind of a management issue, or like on endpoints, when you have 13 agents, you need a more powerful laptop. Just merely the amount of instrumentation that you need on an endpoint overwhelms it. So I think it just comes down to kind of the balance for your org and what level of visibility and control you need on that endpoint, which is highly predicated on the business. And so I think it turns into that. Do you spend $1 million worth of visibility to protect a shovel in a shed? Or are you in a highly regulated industry in the fintech space where it's absolutely mandatory that you have that level of control? And it's the secret sauce of security is trying to turn that dial up and down to find the right level of granularity of visibility and control versus, for example, the common problem that DLP tools have.
Yeah.
More often than not, DLP blocks the good guy from trying to do the right thing than it does the bad guy. And so I think that's just, there's a secret sauce there, as a head of security or a CISO that you need to turn in order to make sure that you're enabling that business, because you can burn a lot of money really fast. Mm-hmm. You can ask for a lot of headcount really quickly to instrument everything. But what do you do with the data to enable the business outcome, I think, is where we often struggle, as we pile on more agents to get more control.
Do you see, I often viewed Postman as like a research and design tool for me as like an architect for code where I could play with APIs and figure out what the sequence of conversation I wanted. As Postman evolves as a security tool, do you see it helping to provide those guardrails around how to develop these integrations in an effective way or build good network segmentation practices?
As far as network segmentation, I'm not sure I see us moving as much into that space because just network is so nuanced, and everyone's got their own jalopy, if you will, of how they want to do it. But I think we do want to get more opinionated on how APIs are built and helping you build more robust APIs out of the gate. And so I think that is definitely a direction that we want to go. We want to help users and get more guiding hands down the best path so that you can start to Lego block APIs together in order to create those business outcomes. But I think diving into the network is going to be pretty thorny.
Yeah.
And pretty challenging because there's so much nuance into this VPC chatting with this one, but not for these reasons. And having looked at a lot of networks from a lot of companies, how they get to a user device destination or app is that's a really hard problem to solve. And I don't think kind of the industry is there outside of a couple of providers already in the security space.
I'm probably pretty myopic in my viewpoint of it too, where almost everything I build is like a RESTful web API. I don't think about the other modalities all that often, but you all support a lot of other modalities. I mean, to your point about some of the things that Anthropic has come out with about interacting with agents and things like that, you guys are probably keeping up with the marketplace as they design these different methods of computers interacting with each other.
Yeah. In fact, just yesterday we announced MCP support.
Oh, that's great.
So we're actively on kind of, I would say from a research perspective, on the bleeding edge, what we're releasing out into product, kind of cutting edge to make sure that it's integrated into the suite. You get everything you know and love about Postman, but you have good protocol support for how you move forward. But yeah, to your point, a large percentage of our ecosystem is going to be RESTful interactions, and it's going to be for a very long time because that's the majority of the APIs out there.
Yeah, I mean, we've adopted it as a fundamental software architecture, even inside a single stack at this point. It's the default, right? There was a day when I did a lot of XML work, but now it's all JSON. They design their own. Yeah, I know.
Good old SOAP.
That's right. Tell me about first coming into Postman. Was there someone that had your job before you joined the team?
Yeah, I think as a company evolves, the type of security and IT leadership ends up, the needs end up shifting.
Yeah.
And I think my predecessor did a fantastic job of pulling together some technology for where Postman was. I think the glide path of where we're going with regards to compliance frameworks, with regards to what our path looks like for HIPAA and things of that nature, to build more and more trust with kind of our Fortune 500. I think that's the next level for us as a company, and obviously the security underpinnings that make all of that real. And so at some point, you even see this is they will eventually shift towards, well, what does steady state look like for security and IT, and eventually see, like at Palo, CISOs aren't really worried about day to day. They're worried about sales. And so this almost becomes kind of a complete sales gig, if you will, for how they're talking about the market and what's going on and the trends that they're seeing. And so I think there's just life cycles to CISOs within our respective journeys. And I think they were looking to enable kind of that mid-cycle, if you will.
I see. And so, I've seen this a bunch, but it's confirming as you're expanding the marketplace you want to service, you're expanding the credentials that allow you to enter that marketplace. It sounds like HIPAA is on the roadmap a little bit for you guys, or something you've already accomplished.
We're en route.
Yeah.
We're en route towards moving that direction, because that's where our customers are taking us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's if you're going to be a good steward of your customers' data, I not only want to follow those practices, I want to make sure I'm getting the certifications and the third-party attestations that show you that I'm moving in that direction. So that's kind of the trajectory that we're moving, because that's what our customers are demanding.
You seem comfortable with this idea that we're going to design some of our security around these frameworks that are coming at us, and maybe in a legacy way that I think there was more resistance, or we've certainly heard that from CISOs at times where they were like, I know what I'm doing. Has that been part of the transformation that the organization is going through a little bit?
I think it's more the scars that I've gotten as I've been at previous roles. I've seen the power of those frameworks to help shape and guide your thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm taking us on those journeys because our customers are asking for it. But if you follow the spirit of what many of those compliance frameworks are actually asking for, you should be doing all of the thing on the appropriate prerequisites underneath the hood anyway.
Yeah.
And so I'm creating a clean glide path to those certifications, as opposed to what can often get lost in a certification is how do we all look the other way and try to get this certification? And that's not the type of shop I want to run. I don't think that is the level of diligence that we really need as an industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it can often fall into that of just how do I get the badge? And that isn't us. And like I said earlier, that's just not Abhinav, our founder. That's not his mindset.
Yeah, I think this is one of the things that I struggled with as a CTO at an early stage business, was that I needed to get the certification, but I didn't want the certification to be any different than the actual security that we did. That I didn't like. I didn't mind that we had requirements placed on us. They felt like they had the right amount of wiggle room for us to find our right work in that. Mm-hmm. But I didn't like the idea that I was just going to get a badge, but what I thought, we had these two different gears we were trying to run in at the same time.
And it shouldn't be. And if it is, we're doing it wrong. Because if I think I helped take probably 30 plus some odd products through Palo to FedRAMP High. I was responsible for that as a part of the enterprise, and CMMC compliance. And if you do it right, and you translate control language into technical implementation and vice versa, you can get there, but it does take more work.
Yeah.
And if you just lean on this is technically how I understand something, I'm going to go implement it the way that I understand it, you can often miss nuance that the control is requesting. An example being provisional access. Well, if you don't know how to set that up in your environment, or you don't know identity access management well enough, well, maybe a fixed role is good enough, because that's what I know how to do. But in a compliance framework, they'll often say, look, you need provisional access. Like, how long do you really need this? Mm-hmm. Now, we can translate it and say it's zero trust, least privilege, and then we can kind of work our way back in. But at the end of the day, it's provisional access. I need X amount of time for this permission and this role to perform this task.
Yeah. Yeah. So FedRAMP High is just mind blowing. I think you're the first person I've ever talked to that's owned that they've taken an organization through a couple of mediums throughout my career. But that's a brutal type of assessment and methodology process, but just a high bar to meet and maintain that trust for your companies. Yeah. Your customers.
Yeah, and it's a different sport at that level. And as you move into the DoD, the sport just gets complex, even more complex. Yeah. And I think that's when you start to find a blend as a practitioner of I know my space to now I am defending in layers, and every layer needs to be able to work in unison to adequately protect the attacker or stop the attacker. That's why these controls exist. and we still had our red team dance through us at times.
Yeah.
And we needed to keep upping our game because blue's hard.
I know. Yeah.
Blue is really hard.
I've told folks that I think the sports metaphor works here. It's like soccer. You're going to lose some matches. Like there's an opponent on the field. They're constantly trying to figure out how to get around you. And it's a hard job, right? Because one goal scored against you is really difficult. Yeah. Yeah.
We, when I was at Palo Alto Networks, we used to set up challenges. The head of offensive security and myself, and we would set up challenges. The first year, that individual had to send an email to the CIO saying that engineering is amazing and we as security failed because I had won the challenge. They weren't able to break in. And the second year, me being kind of my classic type A, I'm like, we got to up the ante. Winner gets to pie in the face the other person. And well, they won. And there's a video of me getting pied in the face, with a couple of folks in the background watching, because I was like, you're not going to break in. I beat you last year. I'm going to beat you this year. And they broke out a very novel technique and pie in the face. Luckily, I got to pick the pie. I went kind of lemon meringue because there's a pie density problem I was worried about. So I went lemon meringue, and it didn't hurt as much. But
also temperature. You want to come with a cooler temperature.
Yeah. So
that's epic. It is important to kind of respect the community around you and the challenges that they have when you're doing this kind of work. That's hard sometimes to see, but certainly my old boss at British Telecom was like, if we don't get hacked this year, Justin, they'll cut our budget. That was the old school way. But I think it's just being aware of the hard work of security. Although I think that the certifications have changed the ROI analysis, because it's a revenue thing. It's not, security is no longer a cost center. It's like, I get this market if I get this level of security. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that is what changes the mindset. But as long as you don't lose the fun along the way, it's a wild ride. This industry is always changing. And the running joke right now is in MCP, the S is for security. And it's like, whoa, it's kind of an afterthought. Like, what is this agent that I've just downloaded off of GitHub? Like, what does it do?
Yeah.
It interacts with the file system. And you're like, well, how do I know? So, but this is in the last 7 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the wild part about this industry, and the part that just wakes me up every morning and just gets me pumped and ready to go.
Yeah, it is exciting. There's a lot of innovation going on. I think, how do you think about perhaps both the security side from an operations perspective of AI and Postman, and then also, do you influence the product side a fair bit? Are you cycling through what you might consume or you might recommend be in the marketplace for security-minded adoptions?
So I'll answer the back half of your question first. I am customer zero at Postman. In IT and in security, we use our product for agents and to solve our workflows. When the product doesn't work or work the way we interpreted it, we go back and say, hey, here's my use case. Here's what I'm trying to solve. Where is this on the product roadmap? So we have to eat it. The drinking your own champagne, if you will, as the analogy. We are customer zero from a usage standpoint. That then allows us to bump into security use cases. We use Postman to protect our own APIs and test our own APIs because we're at front and center. And so we often look at it through a security lens from a development standpoint. Operationally, we look at it as well. What flows into our SIEM? How can it be better? How can we get logs more and more specific so that we can take more and more action? How do we make our secret scanner more and more actionable when it comes in? many security tools when they are built or when people build security features, they're great at throwing an alert at you, but not helping you actually solve the problem, kind of the classic security tool issue. We're taking that mindset operationally and shoving that back into the Postman team to make sure that those changes get done. So we're looking at it from soup to nuts across the entire ecosystem. How do you consume it? How do you better help enable workflows? And third, how do you make it more secure out of the gate?
Yeah, I also love this this idea that we can chain together these models or agents and get them through a process like that of work. But it does open up access to things that we would have a human or expect a human, their guardrails that we've tried to install to them to operate with it. But it does feel like kind of the if-then loop of memory. Like we're going from a model that could, summarize information into a do this, then check that, then look at the next step. And for us, we think it's going to push back on the analyst role in some cases, where the machine can read a certain set of practices and be an expert analyst, recommended changes from an operations perspective, perhaps even go and execute those changes, broadly in the org. Yeah, it is exciting.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a promotion path between AI collects the information, analyzes the information, provides recommended action, human takes action, and then at some point there'll be we will elevate beyond I've always take the same 3 actions when this problem comes up. Here's the decision criteria. Now let's flip the switch and hopefully we don't turn on Skynet and it take over the world.
I don't think we're quite there yet, but it's fun.
No, not quite. We're a couple years out.
Yeah. It is a little uncanny at times, but yeah. What, speaking of the future, how do you think, about, I'll ask you where you might be focused. What kind of are you more worried about certain security issues cropping up in the future, or do you think a lot about the opportunities that some of these new technologies are providing?
Well, from a threat landscape standpoint, I think security still has the hygiene problem across the board. And so I'd be remiss if I didn't say, I wake up every morning and worry about our supply chain risks. Log4j wasn't that long ago. And I remember as soon as I realized our impact, I called my mom and said, well, I'm not going to be making it for Christmas. Love you. Yeah. So supply chain risks are top of mind. And I still don't think we as an industry have really solved that well. I think SaaS-based risk is still a problem. We can TPRM each other for days, but, how do I visualize and manage my SaaS-based risk is a challenge for newer companies. More legacy companies have a lot of things in-house that they run, but I have a massive SaaS risk that still keeps me up. And then there's that tertiary risk that is still nascent and forming around like agents and how do I get fit for purpose connections from my agent back into the ecosystem of APIs that I have. And that is a risk of mine. If I had to look at what's going to put me out of business every day first, it's still kind of the classic tried and true supply chain risks, SaaS-based risks. And then it's agents in the grand scheme of things.
There's a lot more like near-term known issues that feel like they need the resolution maybe before we get to future-proofed.
Yeah. I feel like it's AI shiny and hot, and it could be easy to just say, well, I'm going to block everything.
Yeah.
I'm going to block the whole internet and let you go to your favorite news site and postman.com.
Yeah.
But I would cripple the company. And that's where I think I'm allowing the risk because this company needs to grow to stay at the forefront of API collaboration.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I know I've got a lot of hygiene work that I need to go do, because every CISO, if they look themselves in the mirror or they have good visibility, they know they need to go do as well.
Yeah.
And that's the balance that I've got to find. But it's probably in those three in that order as far as what keeps me up at night.
Mm-hmm. It's I think the configuration thing is interesting. We've only had any challenges, when someone just made a mistake. They didn't secure a document the right way or send it to the wrong email or something like that. I haven't had, not in a long, long time, had any big like cybersecurity issues, knock on wood, of course. And it is fun to think about the future disasters, I think, more than the ones that I need to solve today.
Yeah. It's that old version of Jake where you're laying in your code that's probably going to kill you long before someone wires up an agent and it becomes a data exfil bot. So
I haven't heard that name in a long time, jQuery.
It's out there.
It's out there. Yes, I was talking to a friend the other day, and I was like, "Are you still running our old JVMs?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, they're still on. They're going strong."
Yeah. So it's not as sexy, and that's probably not the exciting answer that catches a lot of headlines. But like, if you asked me about what's evolving and what I worry about, like it's really those things today.
Yeah.
Because agents are tomorrow's problem.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the things we've seen, and I wonder if this resonates with you, is that too many organizations place all their trust in security in like you, Sam, as the head of security. But my philosophy is that like, this is an operational characteristic, like everyone participates across the board. And I think we tried to solve this with like security training, but the thing I've gotten to do more and more has been like, this is in your job description. You own this part of security. This is your bit. Yeah. And that's helped.
I think the success of heads of security and CISOs for longevity are directly correlated to how much they align the company to the mission of security. Mm-hmm. And physical use cases, more often than not, resonate with folks a little bit easier. But it's just hey, if I'm walking into a building and everyone needs the badge, did you at least look at Sam's badge? If so, then security is part of your job. You just subconsciously did it. And in a digital space, it gets a little sloppier and not quite as clean. But the physical use case really helps hopefully resonate with people. And then you kind of extrapolate from cyber back into that for email hygiene. Like, do you need to be a clicker? Do you need to click on everything? So, and rewarding behaviors, like when people report, like, you reported a phish, like, that's awesome. Good job. You raised something to our awareness. And maybe that is a new attack campaign that we haven't seen yet. Like, thank you. Mm-hmm. Good job, as opposed to slapping them on the hand and saying, you fool, you're a clicker. Yeah. So I think just culturally, when you can pull the entire org in, you create a lot more longevity for the organization to minimize a breach that is inevitably going to happen.
Yeah. Sam, we're really grateful for you sharing your expertise. I'm grateful for you supporting a product that I love. I know they're giving you a paycheck too, but I really appreciate that you guys at Postman are keeping this really great tool rolling and continuing to give us a lot of value. I know my team uses it day in, day out. I talk to them all the time when we do integration work. I'm like, can you show me how you built that in Postman? Like, yeah, okay. So
awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me. And it's I really appreciate the time. It's fun to talk shop.